Ethan always loved his work at the intergalactic spaceport. As an engineer, he was constantly surrounded by strange ships from distant galaxies, all powered by technologies Earth could only dream of. His job was to keep everything in perfect condition, to ensure each alien craft, whether from a small moon or an expansive, powerful fleet, could dock safely and take off with no trouble. It was just a regular day for him. The sun set over the metal plains of the docking bay, casting long shadows from the massive starships. Ethan moved from ship to ship, making quick checks, ensuring each had no malfunction. Then, while walking to check a new, unusual vessel, he noticed something that caught his attention. A sleek, shining spaceship from Estera had just landed. It was a remarkable sight. Its shiny surface seemed to ripple as though alive. The edges sparkled with light, and its sleek design gave it an otherworldly look. Most of the ships at the spaceport came from other parts of the galaxy, but this one felt different. Ethan knew Esteran ships were known for their impressive designs, but this one was truly something else. He turned towards it and made his way closer, his curiosity piquing. A small group of Esteran attendants were waiting to disembark, but one figure caught Ethan's eye. She was standing apart from the others, looking out of the wide, glass-like windows of the ship. Her features were striking, delicate but powerful in her presence, with smooth golden skin and silver-colored hair flowing in waves down her back. She seemed completely at ease amidst the chaos of the spaceport, but there was an air of mystery about her. There was something about the way she stood, almost as if the entire universe was hers to command. Before he could get too close, she looked up and made direct eye contact. Ethan froze for a moment, startled by how intense her gaze was. Her eyes sparkled like twin stars, full of intelligence and curiosity, but there was something else in them, a quiet promise, as if she knew him somehow, even though they had never met. "Hello, human." She greeted him with a smooth voice that sounded like music, although her accent was distinctly alien. Ethan blinked in surprise but quickly recovered, offering a polite smile. "Hello. I see you've arrived from Estera. Welcome." "I'm Neres," she said, bowing her head slightly. "I need your assistance." "Sure, I'm here to help," Ethan replied, his curiosity growing. He had heard about the Esteran people before. They were known across the galaxy for their technological advancements. But the idea that one of them would seek his help was intriguing. "I've just completed a delicate job with my vessel," she explained. "Something only a skilled human can solve. My ship's docking system requires maintenance. Your expertise is just what we need. But there's more." Neres' voice grew quieter. She hesitated for a moment as if considering how best to word her next sentence. Ethan, sensing that she wasn't just talking about ship repairs, raised an eyebrow. "More? What do you mean by that?" Neres took a step closer, her gaze unwavering, as she met his eyes with surprising intensity. "I see potential in you, human. I believe that you can solve more than just the technical problem with my vessel. Your species, your minds, they are unlike anything my people have encountered. I think you could help us in ways you can't imagine yet." Ethan's curiosity turned into full interest. "Help you with what, exactly?" he asked, though he already had a feeling it was more than just fixing the ship. Neres smiled, a knowing look in her eyes. "We Esterans have mastered technology," she said softly, almost to herself. "But what we've lost over centuries of progress is the thing that makes life worth living. The spark, the creativity, the ability to grow beyond what we know. Your people, the humans, carry it in abundance. You're problem solvers, dreamers. You're always pushing beyond the limits. That's what I need, Ethan. I need you." Ethan's mind raced as he processed her words. Esterans were a powerful species, one of the oldest and wealthiest in the galaxy. If Neres was really asking for his help, it could be much more than just a job. It could change his life completely. "I can't speak for everyone, but..." He paused, his thoughts jumping from one possibility to another. I don't know how I'd fit into all that. I'm just an engineer. Perhaps, she said, still maintaining that soft but intense gaze. But you have something I need. Trust me, if you come with me, I will make you very happy, human. Her words hung in the air. She said it so calmly, yet Ethan felt a strange tug in his chest, an impulse he couldn't explain. It felt like she was offering something far beyond an opportunity. It was a promise, something more. Before he could respond, Neri smiled slightly, as if she already knew the answer. The rest of the crowd moved past them, but her focus never wavered from Ethan. I'll be waiting for you when you're ready, she added, her voice carrying a hint of finality. With that, she turned and walked toward her ship, leaving Ethan alone at the docking platform, feeling like his world had just shifted on its axis. The hum of the spaceport felt distant as Ethan stood frozen in place. Neris's words echoed in his mind. If you come with me, I will make you very happy, human. What did that mean? Could he really be part of something so important, something that involved the entire Esteran people? The crowd bustled around him, people coming and going, but all Ethan could focus on was the strange, yet magnetic alien woman who had just made an extraordinary offer. He had spent his whole life on Earth, working on technology, building new things, solving problems. But the offer Neris had given him felt different. This wasn't just about solving a technical problem. It was something much bigger. He could feel it deep down. Ethan took a deep breath, shaking himself out of his thoughts. It was only a moment ago that Neris had told him she'd wait. That felt almost like a challenge in itself. He didn't know why, but he found himself almost wanting to take that challenge. A few minutes passed before he slowly made his way toward the Esteran ship where Neris had gone. He had the strong urge to go, though everything in him questioned the wisdom of taking such a big step. Neris wasn't just offering him a job. She was offering something that seemed impossible to resist. And it wasn't the promise of riches or fame that she spoke of. It was the way she had looked at him, like he had the answers to something that had been missing from her world. The air around him felt heavier now, as if the decision he was about to make would affect not just his life, but many others. He found the Esteran ship surrounded by attendants, its polished metal reflecting the orange and purple lights of the setting suns. Walking up the ramp, Ethan felt as though he were stepping into an entirely different realm. Inside the ship was like nothing he had ever seen before. The walls, made from an iridescent material, shimmered with changing colors. The sleek, curved surfaces felt soft and inviting. Yet the atmosphere was strange, and there was a sense of grand history about the place. Neris was already there, standing near the glowing control panels. She looked up as he entered. There was that same calm confidence in her presence, the same sense that she knew exactly how things were going to unfold, even if he didn't. You came, Neris said softly, her voice like a gentle melody that seemed to calm any uncertainty he had been feeling. She didn't ask if he was ready, because, somehow, she knew he was. Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but he had so many questions that it was difficult to know where to begin. Neris seemed to understand this, and nodded slightly, as if she knew what he needed. I know this is overwhelming, she said, but you've already made the right decision, Ethan. You'll find that you are exactly the person we need. Esteran needs someone like you. Her smile made him feel more at ease, though the weight of her words still lingered. Ethan cleared his throat and tried to keep his focus. So, you're saying you really want me to come work with your people? For what? What do you really need me to do? Neris's eyes shone with a deep intensity as she took a step closer. We need the one thing we've lost. Our society is at its peak technologically, but we've forgotten how to think like you do, how to push past what's comfortable. We've had everything handed to us for centuries, and that has made us stagnant. Ethan listened carefully, trying to understand the gravity of the situation. You're saying your people don't know how to change anymore. But why ask me? I'm just an engineer from Earth. You are more than that, she responded quickly. Your kind, humans, possess a rare gift, one we've lost. Your ability to innovate, to think beyond the norm, to imagine what seems impossible and turn it into something real, is something no other race in the galaxy can claim. We've been too dependent on what we already know. The silence between them stretched for a moment, and Ethan processed what she was saying. It sounded true. Humans didn't have the centuries of history or advanced technologies of species like the Estarans, but they were endlessly inventive. They didn't accept that something couldn't be done. They found ways to make it happen, even when it seemed impossible. "So, you want me to teach your people how to think like humans?" Ethan asked, beginning to understand what she meant. "How to think beyond limits." "Exactly," Nerys said, her voice firm with determination. "It's not just about technology. It's about how we look at the world. I need someone like you to help us break free from the cycle of reliance on perfection. Our creativity has been buried. You can revive it." Ethan felt a mix of uncertainty and excitement. He wasn't entirely sure he understood everything, but he knew one thing for sure. He had the chance to be a part of something incredible. If Nerys was telling the truth, he had the ability to change the fate of an entire civilization. "All right," he said finally, the words coming out before he had fully thought them through. "I'll do it. I'll help you." Nerys' smile widened. It wasn't just relief on her face, but something deeper, something more meaningful, perhaps even gratitude. "You won't regret this, Ethan," she said, her voice full of promise. As the ship's door slowly closed behind them, sealing him into this new adventure, Ethan wondered what he had truly signed up for. But in that moment, he knew one thing for sure. His life was about to change in ways he never could have imagined. The journey from the spaceport to the Estaran ship was like nothing Ethan had ever experienced. He stood beside Nerys, watching the swirling stars outside the ship's transparent walls. The stars twinkled in mesmerizing patterns, much more vibrant and alive than he had ever seen on Earth. As the ship accelerated into the depths of space, the Earth he had always known slowly faded into the distance. "Do you know where we are going?" Ethan asked, still trying to wrap his mind around everything that had happened. It felt like the world he had always known had been turned upside down in just a matter of hours. "We are traveling to a research station outside Estara, to the edge of our system. There, you will have the time and space you need to begin your work," Nerys answered. Her calm tone eased his racing thoughts, though he still had a million questions. He nodded but didn't say anything more. His mind was full, trying to make sense of the decision he had made. A part of him was nervous. Could he really help these people? What would they expect from him? Nerys seemed to read his mind without needing to say anything more. She placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, her touch light but comforting. "Trust me, Ethan, you'll be able to do much more than you think," she said with a smile that made everything seem easier. Ethan glanced at her, noticing the peaceful confidence in her eyes. It was clear that she believed in him. She wasn't asking just for technical expertise. She was asking him to teach her people how to think like humans, to restore the lost creativity she had talked about before. He had never thought of himself as a teacher, much less someone who could bring a whole civilization back to life in this way. The ship glided through space, moving faster than anything Ethan had experienced before. The gentle hum of the engines was steady and comforting, and as the stars blurred outside, he allowed himself to relax. For the first time in a long time, his mind wasn't filled with the stresses of everyday life. Instead, it was consumed with a sense of adventure, of the unknown. There was a wild sense of possibility ahead of him. After some time, the Estaran ship slowed and entered the orbit of a strange, shimmering planet. Ethan felt his heart beat faster as the ship prepared to land. The landscape below looked unlike anything he had ever seen, a perfect balance between nature and artificial elegance. There were vast, glass-like structures that seemed to grow right out of the ground, blending seamlessly with the mountains in the distance. When the ship landed gently on the surface, the door opened, revealing a vast, glowing city. From the control room, Ethan could see everything. Perfect harmony between technology and nature. Lush greenery stretched alongside bright silver buildings, and glowing streams of light flickered as people walked through the streets below. He was awestruck by how peaceful everything looked. "This place is incredible," Ethan said quietly. He had been to many cities on Earth, but none of them were like this. It felt as though he had stepped into another world, a place that could only exist in dreams. Nerys, standing beside him, nodded. "It is beautiful, isn't it? This is where we live, but what you're seeing isn't enough. We've reached the limit of what we can do by following only what is known. That's where you come in." Ethan turned to face her, still amazed by the beauty of the world before them. "So, where do we begin? How do I help you fix what's missing?" Her eyes sparkled again as she spoke. "We'll start by examining your human ideas, your methods of problem solving. How do you tackle challenges when there's no solution on the table? The first lesson begins by helping us think outside the box." Ethan felt a rush of excitement. Nerys was right. He had solved problems like this many times before. He'd been faced with complex issues where the solution wasn't obvious, but with creativity, thinking differently, and perseverance, he had always found a way. Now he had a chance to teach these ideas to an entire civilization. They walked down a glowing pathway that led into a large building. The inside of the building was just as incredible as the city outside. It had large windows that showed off the natural beauty surrounding them. There were no sharp edges, no hard walls, just smooth, flowing lines, as though the entire structure had been designed to make visitors feel calm and open to new possibilities. As they walked further, Ethan couldn't help but notice the people who worked and lived here. They all seemed to have the same peaceful demeanor as Nerys, though there was a bit of nervousness in the air as they all watched him. It was obvious that Ethan was a stranger, an outsider, but none of them treated him with anything other than respect. It gave him a strange sense of belonging, even though he had just arrived. Finally, they reached a large room at the center of the building. Nerys gestured for Ethan to take a seat at a sleek, crystal-like table. On the surface of the table, images and data appeared as if by magic, showing different designs, technologies, and energy systems. "This is where you'll begin your work," Nerys said, stepping aside to let him examine the holograms that had appeared. Ethan leaned over the table, inspecting the images carefully. He could already tell that these designs were far beyond what Earth had achieved in terms of technology. But they were missing something that would push them past just mere perfection. There was no human touch in them, no spark of ingenuity. Ethan smiled to himself. This was it. This was why he had come here. He was going to help Nerys' people tap into something far more valuable than technology. He was going to help them rediscover creativity, imagination, and the power to think outside the constraints that had held them back for so long. He looked at Nerys, a renewed sense of purpose rising in his chest. "All right, Nerys, let's get started." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Ethan, guided by Nerys, had dived straight into the heart of Esteran culture, exploring their ancient technologies and seeing firsthand the advancements they had made. Despite their impressive achievements, he could tell that their society was trapped in a cycle of repetition, unable to break free from the comfort of familiarity. Nerys had introduced him to the most brilliant minds on Estara, but even they struggled with the limitations they had placed on themselves. As Ethan sat in a futuristic classroom, surrounded by holograms, his frustration began to grow. "You all have the tools," Ethan said, standing at the front of the room. "You have the knowledge, the materials, and the technology. But you're not using them the way humans do." The students, young Esterans with bright eyes and curious minds, listened intently. There was a spark of excitement in their expressions, but it was buried deep under years of tradition. Nerys stood at the back, watching Ethan, her heart swelling with pride as she witnessed his natural talent for teaching. "What you need," Ethan continued, "is to step outside the patterns you're used to. It's like when you're given a puzzle. If you keep trying to solve it the same way, You're going to fail. You need to find new approaches. You need to innovate." The room was silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. It felt like a turning point, both for the Esterans and for Ethan. He had never imagined himself as a teacher, but in this moment, he understood his role. He had to show them that their future wasn't going to come from mimicking old designs. It was going to come from imagining new ones. As he spoke, ideas began to flow through his mind. He could teach them the value of creativity, the power of taking risks. To them, stability had always been key to survival. But Ethan knew that the real progress of civilization came not from maintaining the status quo, but from daring to break barriers. "I know it's not easy," Ethan admitted, "but the first step is to embrace change, even when it's scary." Nerys approached him quietly after the lesson, the students slowly leaving to carry on with their tasks. She smiled softly as she placed her hand on his shoulder. "You're doing great, Ethan." He turned to her with a small grin. "I just hope I'm getting through to them." "You are," she replied. "They are starting to think differently already. You're showing them a whole new way of approaching problems. It's something Estera hasn't seen in a long time." Ethan felt a growing sense of accomplishment, but he wasn't sure if he could truly help them build the kind of future they needed. For the first time, he realized that the Esterans needed more than just solutions. They needed the freedom to explore their creativity, something that had been stifled by centuries of controlled knowledge. As the days passed, Ethan started developing new plans to open their minds to the endless possibilities that humanity was so skilled at. With Nerys by his side, he came up with a series of workshops designed to push them out of their comfort zones. He introduced them to basic human concepts like brainstorming, trial and error, and collaboration. He even set up challenges where groups of Esteran minds worked together to create new inventions, drawing on whatever skills or creativity they had left inside them. At first, the results were underwhelming. Most of the devices they made were simple and lacked innovation. However, with each failure came small victories. A new idea was born, a different way of looking at things. One afternoon, after another failed attempt at creating a new type of energy system, Nerys joined him outside the workspace. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "I never understood what it meant to innovate before you came here." Ethan laughed softly. "I don't think many people do, at least until they try it themselves. But it's the mistakes that matter. Without failure, there's no way to grow." Nerys nodded slowly, her eyes shining with understanding. "And we are ready to grow. All of us. You've opened our eyes." Ethan's heart swelled. "I think we're just getting started." As the days turned into weeks, the workshops and lessons began to bear fruit. While there was still a long way to go, the Esterans were showing a renewed spark of energy and possibility. They were thinking outside their typical boundaries, not bound by the limits of the past. Even the most reserved and rule-bound individuals began experimenting in ways they hadn't before. In one particular workshop, a group of students came up with an idea for an energy-generating device that Ethan had never seen before. It was an abstract design, a blend of different materials, powered by the motion of Estera's natural winds. It wasn't perfect, but it was a huge step toward thinking beyond what their society had been focused on for so long. Ethan was genuinely impressed. This could change everything. Nerys stood beside him, a smile spreading across her face. "It's only the beginning, Ethan. This energy device is just the first of many innovations you'll help us create." For the first time, Ethan saw the future of Estera not as a stagnant place, but as one filled with endless potential. He could feel his mission growing clearer with every passing day. He wasn't just teaching them to think differently. He was helping them rediscover the power of creativity, the key to their survival in the vastness of the galaxy. This wasn't just a job for Ethan anymore. This was something personal. He was part of the team, not just an outsider. He was shaping the future of an entire civilization, one idea at a time. The sound of soft wind blowing through the alien trees filled the air as Ethan and Nerys walked together to the meeting hall. It had been a few weeks since the workshops began, and things were starting to look different. There was a noticeable change in the attitude of the Esteran people. They were no longer fearful of the unknown. They were beginning to embrace it. Ethan smiled as he looked at the young faces of the Esteran students who had joined his latest class. Their eyes were wide with curiosity, and for the first time since his arrival, he could sense genuine excitement in the air. "Today's lesson is different," Ethan said, his voice filled with energy. He had prepared something special for them. "You've been learning to think creatively and solve problems, but today we're going to do something even more exciting. Today we're going to build an entirely new technology, together." The students murmured in surprise, their eyes filled with both awe and nervousness. This kind of challenge was nothing like the standard lessons they were accustomed to. In their culture, everything followed established guidelines. This was new. "But we don't have all the answers," one student spoke up. "How will we create something when we don't even know what we're doing?" "That's the beauty of it," Ethan explained, his voice calm but full of conviction. "We start with a goal and work together. It's okay if we fail or don't have all the answers now. The key is that we try, we experiment, and we learn. Together, we'll discover new ways." The room fell silent as they began to take in his words. Nerys watched from the side, her heart swelling with pride. She had never seen the people of Estera this inspired before. Ethan had started something they didn't even realize they had needed, a sense of wonder at what was possible. And now they were eager to discover it for themselves. The students began working in small groups, drawing up ideas and designs. For the first time, Ethan was not holding their hands. Instead, he was guiding them with questions, encouraging them to think outside their usual patterns. Nerys noticed the change too. When an idea was proposed, no one immediately rejected it. There were no preset rules limiting creativity. And that was when the magic began to happen. A few hours into the session, Ethan sat back and observed the groups as they worked, each one developing something different. The atmosphere in the room felt alive, filled with energy and anticipation. Ideas were flowing like never before. One group, after much debate and trial, had designed a new kind of communication device. They called it a thought linker, a way to share thoughts over vast distances without the use of any spoken word. The concept was so unusual, and yet it could be exactly what the Esteran people needed in their complex, multi-dimension world. Ethan was astonished. "This is incredible." The group looked up, their faces glowing with pride. "It was your lesson about not following old systems," one of them said shyly. "We didn't let limits stop us." "That's the spirit," Ethan replied, his voice filled with excitement. "Keep pushing the boundaries. Always keep pushing." As the days passed, the entire classroom began to catch the infectious enthusiasm. The students were no longer intimidated by mistakes. They now saw them as necessary steps toward improvement. Even some of the older, more established scientists of Estera were intrigued by the new ideas Ethan had encouraged. There were whispers of change spreading throughout their world. It was the beginning of something far greater than Ethan had initially imagined. His role was not just that of a teacher. It was as though he had become a catalyst, awakening a dormant spirit of innovation in Estera. Nerys noticed this growing energy too. She no longer had to suggest new ideas. The people were doing it on their own, driven by an understanding that they, too, could create something new. One evening, after a long day of experimentation, Nerys and Ethan sat together near the shores of a quiet lake. The glow of the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant reds and oranges. Ethan was staring out at the landscape, his mind racing with the possibilities of what could come next. "You know," Nerys said softly, breaking the comfortable silence, "I didn't think things could ever change here. Our culture has always been so focused on what we already know." Ethan turned to her, a soft smile on his face. "Sometimes change is hard to see when you're standing so close to it, but once you take a step back, you see it differently." She smiled back, her eyes shining with admiration for him. "I know that now. You've given us something we didn't know we could have, the freedom to dream beyond our traditions." "And that's the most important part," Ethan replied. "The rest will follow." Nerys took a deep breath, then looked at him with a mixture of affection and determination. "Ethan, I believe in what you're doing. And I think I always have. You've sparked something in our people, a light that hadn't been there for generations." His gaze softened, and for the first time, he understood just how much his presence here had impacted her. It wasn't just the new ideas they were creating, or the breakthroughs they had achieved. It was the way that Estera's people were changing in their hearts and minds. "It's not just me," Ethan said gently. "You're part of it too, Nerys. Without you, this wouldn't have been possible. You're just as much a part of this as anyone else." She reached out and gently took his hand, her smile growing warmer. "We'll build this new world together, Ethan." As they sat in peaceful silence, watching the sky change color, the truth of their shared mission felt undeniable. They weren't just fighting for progress. They were fighting to create a new future, for both themselves and the generations to come. The air was alive with the hum of excitement in the Esteran city. Word had spread of the remarkable achievements that Ethan and the students had made. Even the most skeptical leaders of the community, who had once dismissed Ethan's unconventional ideas, were now listening. There was a growing realization that a transformation was occurring. It was no longer just about new technology. It was about the future itself. Nerys sat with Ethan in a small observation room that overlooked a vast open field where students were practicing some of their new inventions. Their creations were strange yet promising. Machines that could purify the air, vehicles that floated above the ground, and a system that could communicate without speech, using only thoughts. It was as if Estera had entered a new age overnight. As they watched the students work, Nerys couldn't help but smile. "I still can't believe how far we've come." Ethan chuckled, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "We've only just begun. But I believe this is the first step towards something much bigger. These ideas are just the beginning. Imagine the things we'll accomplish when we expand beyond what we know." Nerys turned to face him, her expression serious yet filled with anticipation. "But Ethan, I'm scared. What if this change takes us down a path we can't control? What if we lose everything we know?" He met her gaze, his expression calm but determined. "I understand your fears, but the biggest mistake we can make is to resist change. Fear keeps us stuck in the past. What we're doing is creating a future for everyone. It's going to be different, yes, but that's not a bad thing." Her concern was palpable, yet she saw the unwavering belief in his eyes. He was right. Change could be unsettling, but maybe it was exactly what the people of Estera needed. She took a deep breath, feeling more hopeful than she had in a long time. "I suppose change is always unsettling," Nerys agreed softly. "But you're right. What's the point of staying in the past when the future offers so much more?" As the day went on, the students continued to work diligently on their projects. The air buzzed with the sound of whirring machines and enthusiastic conversations about the possibilities they were unlocking. And as always, Ethan moved from group to group, offering advice or simply standing back to watch as the young minds discovered new paths. Later that afternoon, Nerys joined him as he sat outside under a wide tree, its green branches swaying gently in the breeze. The sky overhead was painted in hues of lavender and pink as the sun began to set. "You've done something extraordinary here, Ethan," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "I didn't know it at the time, but bringing you here was the best decision I could have ever made. This is a future our children will be proud to inherit." Ethan smiled, feeling the weight of her words. "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Nerys. Your leadership and support gave me the strength to carry on, even when things felt uncertain." She reached out and touched his hand gently, her eyes meeting his. "We did this together, and now it's time to share this with the rest of the world." Just then, one of the elder council members approached them. Elder Thar, an old and respected member of the Esteran Council, moved slowly toward them, his eyes reflecting both wisdom and concern. "I've been observing what's been happening over the past few weeks," Elder Thar said, his deep voice soft but commanding. "I must admit, at first I didn't understand the value of your methods, human, but now I see it." He paused for a moment, studying Ethan and Nerys. "You've given our people something we thought we had lost forever. Hope. Hope that we can build something new. Hope that there's a future beyond what we know." Ethan nodded but said nothing, allowing Elder Thar to continue. The elder sighed, a look of relief washing over his face. "I'm not sure what this future will look like. We can never fully know. But I think I understand now. We've been afraid of letting go of our old ways, but I see how we can merge the past and the future. How we can use new ideas while keeping what makes us who we are." Nerys smiled, a sense of pride filling her chest. "That's exactly what we've been trying to teach. We can build something together without destroying the foundation of who we are." Elder Thar placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, offering him a small smile. "It's clear that our world will never be the same after all this. And I, for one, am grateful for what you've done. You've opened our eyes to possibilities we never dreamed of." Ethan's heart swelled with pride, but he also felt a deep sense of responsibility. Their world was on the verge of something remarkable, but it was also delicate. This progress couldn't be forced. It had to grow organically. "We haven't reached the end of this journey yet," Ethan replied carefully. "There are still many challenges ahead, but we're on the right path." As the stars began to appear in the evening sky, Elder Thar nodded thoughtfully. "Indeed, but we face those challenges with new hope." Nerys, leaning closer to Ethan, whispered, "We're creating a future together, one that neither of us could have imagined alone." Ethan smiled, his heart full of optimism. They had come so far, and no matter what the future held, they would face it together, with strength, vision, and the courage to overcome anything in their path. The following weeks were a whirlwind of progress and discovery. Estera was alive with innovation, and everywhere Ethan and Nerys looked, they saw the fruits of their efforts. Machines working to purify the water, solar-powered farms that fed the city, and methods of communication that linked far-away regions in the blink of an eye. Even the skeptical leaders of Estera had become supporters, their fears replaced by admiration. Yet, for all the advancements, there was one challenge still waiting on the horizon: how to share this knowledge and vision with the wider galaxy. If Estera wanted to ensure a peaceful future for all, the truth about their newfound path needed to spread far beyond their world. One evening, Nerys and Ethan stood on the terrace of the new headquarters, a symbol of progress they had worked together to build. The light of the setting sun cast a golden hue over the city below, and for a moment, it was as if time had slowed down. "I never thought we'd make it this far," Nerys said, her voice filled with awe as she watched the lights flicker on in the city below. "You've changed everything, Ethan. Not just for Estera, but for the entire galaxy." Ethan smiled, but there was a sense of quiet determination in his eyes. "We've started something great here, Nerys. But our work isn't finished. If we truly want to make a difference, we need to take what we've learned and share it with others. We have to show the galaxy that change is possible. Peace and progress are possible." Nerys nodded, a fire in her eyes. "And we will. We've shown that humans and Esterans can work together. This new technology, these ideas, it's just the beginning. We'll show them that the old ways, the old fears, they don't have to control the future." Just then, a small, quiet voice broke their contemplation. "Ethan, Nerys." The pair turned to see Elder Thar, his serious gaze fixed on them. He was holding a datapad, which he handed over. "I think you'll want to see this." Ethan took the device, reading through its contents quickly. "An invitation?" he asked, looking up with surprise. "From the Galactic Union." The elder nodded. "It seems they've noticed what's happening here. They want to discuss your methods, your innovations. They've agreed to meet on their main station." It's a sign that they see potential in what you've started. Ethan and Neres exchanged a look, a mix of excitement and trepidation. This was it, their opportunity to reach the galaxy. "We can't afford to back down now," Ethan said with a steely resolve. "If they really want to know what we're doing here, they need to understand it fully." The next morning, the ship was ready to depart for the Galactic Union's main station. The crew, mostly students, had designed and prepared a ship capable of traveling faster than any vessel before it, a gift from the partnership between human ingenuity and Esteran technology. Elder Thar had insisted on coming along for the meeting as well, a last-ditch effort to ensure the Council's interests were represented. As they entered the grand docking bay of the Galactic Union station, the sight was overwhelming. Thousands of beings from every corner of the galaxy moved through the corridors, busy and purposeful, going about their duties. Ethan and Neres followed Elder Thar into the vast hall, where a group of representatives waited for them. Among them were several familiar faces: the blue-skinned leaders of the Zyrathians, the multi-limbed Talgorians, and several more species Ethan had studied in his time on Estera. The atmosphere was tense, but one thing was certain: the galaxy was paying attention. The leader of the Union, an aged yet dignified figure, stood before them. "Ethan, Neres, it is clear that you have accomplished something remarkable here on Estera," he said, his voice filled with quiet curiosity. "We've reviewed the data you sent us, and it is beyond anything we had imagined. The Union hasn't seen progress like this in generations." Ethan stood tall and met the leader's gaze with confidence. "What we've achieved is only the beginning. We believe this is what the galaxy needs right now: collaboration over conflict, innovation over destruction, hope instead of fear. This is our message. It's not just for Estara, but for all of us. We can do better together than we ever could apart." The representatives, silent until now, began to murmur among themselves. The air seemed to crackle with energy, as if something monumental were about to unfold. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the Union leader nodded slowly. "You speak of unity, and you've already begun to show that the best ideas come from collaboration. But before we move forward, there is one question we must ask. Can we trust each other, despite our differences? Can the entire galaxy adopt a new path?" Ethan looked at Neres, who gave him a nod of encouragement. He returned his gaze to the leader and said, "We have no choice but to try. If we don't, if we continue as we have, we risk losing everything." There was a heavy pause, but it was not long before the Union leader's face softened. "You are right. We can't ignore the signs any longer. The time has come for change." And with that, the decision was made. The Galactic Union would listen. They would join forces with Estara and any race willing to work together. The future was not guaranteed, but for the first time, it felt hopeful. As Ethan, Neres, and Elder Thar left the meeting, walking through the station's vast corridors, they looked at each other and smiled. They had done it. The message of peace and cooperation had made its way across the galaxy. The story of human resilience, of unity over division, was just beginning to reach the stars. And with that, they stepped out onto the balcony, looking toward a new horizon, a future worth fighting for.